Hello.
A sad fact of reality is that just because something is good doesn't mean it's going to be successful, and this isn't even the first time I've said that on this show, but it's true for a lot of hidden gems out there that just never got the time to shine that they truly deserved.
Klonoa is a big example of such a case, where the games in the series have all been solid and some have even been outstanding, but the general populace never gravitated towards the character in his titles, and the franchise eventually died out after the release of the Wii remake from 2009.
12 years without a new title, and this little guy definitely deserved better, but what would a continued adventure look like for the Dream Traveler? We've hopped around the franchise a lot before today, but in terms of the franchise's main canon, this is the furthermost point in Klonoa's story.
In a way, I think it captures Klonoa at his best, a rather simple tale of our hero arriving in a new location, meeting new friends, and helping them work out the troubles of their world as well as helping them develop as people, all the while delivering in fun new ways to expand the puzzle-solving, platforming, and fantastic nature of the places Klonoa finds himself in. As a matter of fact, there were plans at one point to remake this in a similar way to that of the original game if the first remake did well enough, but sadly, the sales just weren't there, which is honestly the struggle this series has always had from the very start.
So, what exactly have people been missing? Why do I and a lot of other fans resent the world for letting a franchise like this end? Well, let's jump on in and find out, but if you haven't played Door to Phantom Isle or seen my review of it, just be aware that there are going to be some spoilers for Door to Phantom Isle in this review, because it's kind of hard to talk about this game without mentioning the ending of that one. So, without any further delay, this is Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil. Alright, let's just start off by naming our profile. Let's give it something good. Alright, yeah, I like that. Let's go with that. Yeah, there's no way I'm gonna regret that.
So I'm not really sure how much time has actually passed between Door to Phantom Isle and Lunatea's Veil, but Klonoa is definitely looking older this time around. I'm sure it was a decision made because of the time that the game was being released in, slightly older demographic and all that, but I also can't help but wonder if part of this choice came about because the developers thought that the more childish nature of the original game is what kept it from gaining more success. After being rescued from the water by two residents of this new world we've been dropped off in, they introduced themselves as Lolo and Popka and referred to Klonoa as the Dream Traveler. So the people of this world are obviously familiar with Klonoa's role, even more than he seems to understand himself, and it's not just our new friends here, as we also see a mysterious figure who is looking for our hero too before Lolo and Popka beat them to the punch. The duo brings Klonoa along on their mission to ring the 4 bells of the land of Lunatea and retrieve the elements that are hidden within. Lunatea has been dealing with a pretty nasty monster problem that I guess the pest control guys from down the road weren't really equipped to deal with, and the hope is that by collecting the elements from all 4 kingdoms, they can seal away the darkness from taking over the world. Along the way, the gang encounters the mysterious figure again, revealing herself as a sky pirate named
Okay, just real talk for a second. How is this character's name pronounced? Because I've heard it said like Leorna, which I think sounds a lot better than Leorina, which is the way I think it's supposed to be spelled, but I think Leorna sounds best, so let's just go with that.
Anyway, Leorna and her adorable sidekick, Tat, get in the way of our heroes from time to time, trying to steal Klonoa's ring so she herself can ring the bells and collect the elements, but the crew really isn't sure what she actually plans on doing with them at first. The story stays pretty simple for most of its duration, with a simple, go get the thing! But what ties it all together is the character-driven nature of the plot. What would typically be a pretty standard fetch quest, getting the player from point A to point B, is enriched by the people you're with along the way. Lolo is definitely the big standout. As a priestess in training, she has a lot of spunk, but not exactly the skill to carry her ambitions. She's granted the title of priestess very early on in the game due to the dire circumstances, but she struggles with self-doubt later on as she feels that she's really not up to the task and that she's just getting a free ride while Klonoa does all the work, bothered by the fact that she has the rank of a priestess, but isn't sure if she's truly worthy of it. This all comes to a head when the trio visits the Kingdom of Indecision. First off, I think the whole premise of this place is really cool. You see, every kingdom in Lunatea reflects an aspect of the human condition and the value that we often put on it. The kingdoms of joy, discord, tranquility, and this Kingdom of Indecision appropriately named Mira Mira. It's here that Lolo is haunted by the memories of her past, where the other priestesses in training mocked her and bullied her into believing that she was worth less than she truly was. Her self-doubt becomes so strong that she stops powering Klonoa's ring altogether for about half a boss battle, and Popka gives her a pep talk that can be summed up by saying that how much you're able to do doesn't really matter matter as long as you do everything you can. We put a lot of expectations on ourselves to the point where we think we'll never be able to accomplish the great things that we're meant to, and it's enough to stop us dead in our tracks, never accomplishing anything. And man, did you expect me to be able to say all this about the personal journey of a single character from a silly kids game like this?
It's almost like strong messages and ideas can be expressed through artistic mediums that people don't take seriously or look down on as lesser forms of entertainment, and I'm rambling, let's move on.
Lolo takes Popka's words to heart and is able to more freely help in the coming battles, able to recognize that no one person has to be the savior or a hero or the best of the best, but that it's absolutely crucial to understand the value of being a small part of something bigger. Leorna is sort of the other side of that coin, as it's later revealed that she was once in training to be a priestess as well, but her ambitions got the better of her and she set off to find the power required to save and protect the world, eventually fueled by her frustration to the point that she tries to use the elements not to seal off the darkness, but rather open the gates to their origin, making way to the fifth and hidden kingdom of sorrow. She even goes as far as to create a replica of Klonoa's ring to carry out her goals, using monsters against Klonoa and the others, and becoming so obsessed with the sorrow that she's allowed to stay within her that she tries to enact revenge on the world and make them feel what she has. After acquiring the elements and opening the way to the kingdom of sorrow, she herself is transformed into a nightmarish creature that Klonoa has to subdue in order to save. I think that all Leorna really wanted was to be seen and valued. She wanted to be recognized as someone who mattered to the world. Once Klonoa, Lolo, and sure, I guess Popka show her that there's still plenty that she can do to help the world around her, she and Tat join the cause to face the heart of the kingdom together. It's here that the crew encounters the King of Sorrow himself. He could actually be heard calling out to Klonoa for help throughout the entire game, and was even the one that brought our hero to Lunatea to begin with. The King of Sorrow kind of reminds me of Gaudius from the first game, but I like the way this guy is fleshed out just a bit more. The motivations are similar, with the king wanting to use Klonoa as a vessel to carry the pain that he's felt, calling out Lunatea for shutting out the sensation of sorrow and demonizing it, leaving the king to wallow in isolation with no one to help him when he needed it the most. He condemns the walls people have put up against the kingdom, the shield that they've used to protect themselves from something they didn't want to feel, referring to it as Lunatea's veil. After defeating him, Klonoa has a pretty nice moment where he promises the king that the people of Lunatea won't forget sorrow and that it can be recognized as a part of them, and that it's not as horrible as everyone seems to think. Once the fifth and final bell is rung, harmony is restored, and the Kingdom of Sorrow is once again allowed to leave its plane of isolation, becoming a part of Lunatea as it was always meant to be. Leorna and Tat agree to help rebuild the Kingdom of Sorrow. Being left on their own to deal with the emotion themselves, it makes sense that they would understand how to best rebuild the kingdom and understand the significance. Lolo, interestingly enough, actually gives up her rank as a priestess, saying that she wants to continue to work and grow until she can earn it in the way that she always wanted to. She isn't letting it weigh her down anymore, and proving to herself that she can earn it is now a means of accepting what her limitations are and still believing that she can do great things in spite of them. Leorna and Lolo both had really solid writing and character arcs, but I really can't say the same for their respective sidekicks. Now, don't get me wrong, I like these guys, like, a lot, but they do a better job at just adding some extra flavor to the cast rather than propelling it to greater heights or anything like that. I was relieved that Popka wasn't just a useless comic relief character like I was expecting him to be, and he gets a good word in every once in a while, but I really wouldn't be able to give you a thesis on his motivations and ideals or anything. He's fun enough to the point that I'm glad he was there, but still not amazing. Leorna's partner Tat, on the other hand, had so little to do with the story though. She helps mess with Klonoa from time to time and shows up to interrupt their journey more than once, but outside of her cool ability to split into two beings and the fact that I absolutely adore her character design, there really isn't any actual depth to her character. Unless you count her little crush on Klonoa. And whoa, how did they get away with a joke like this in an E-rated game? That just leaves one major player, Klonoa himself. And you know, I'm a little surprised by how little there is to actually say about him, but even more surprised by how well that works for the story. I think Klonoa goes through changes, self-reflection, and some legitimate growth, but it's all very subtle. Now, don't misunderstand me, he's not a totally static character or anything like that. He's still got attitude, he has things to say, he reacts appropriately to what's happening around him, and his endless drive to help those around him is a fine enough motivation for the actions he takes to help save Lunatea, but he also never tries to hijack the spotlight. When important things are happening for the other people around him, he helps out where he can, but also knows when to stay a bit off to the side and let others have their moment. What I find fascinating is how I feel like the changes he experiences are sort of told through either the other characters or the environments themselves. The older and wiser characters in the story often make remarks towards or about him that give us some insight on how they recognize his convictions and seem to understand that this guy has gone through quite a bit. One of my favorite moments of environmental insight into Klonoa's character, though, comes in the Kingdom of Sorrow, where there's a melancholy feeling being portrayed through the whole area, but just off into the background, if you listen really closely to the music, you can actually hear the theme of Klonoa's grandpa from the first game, which, if you've played the original game or saw my review of it, then you gotta know how much that hurts. It tells me in this place built on sorrow, even Klonoa is revisiting some of the most difficult memories he's tried to suppress, and the fact that this game just hides it here and never spells it out is really commendable, actually. But the greatest moment showcasing Klonoa's growth, it comes right here at the end of the game. Lolo has given up her rank, Popka is trying to play it cool and avoid a sad goodbye, and Klonoa himself knows what's coming next. As the Dream Traveler, once his work is done and the world he saved is brought back to the way it should be, it's time for him to go. He embraces Lolo and tells her that it's okay to cry, and to let the sadness of this moment be proof that the time that they had spent together was meaningful. With that, he turns towards the horizon, his head held high, ready to move on to whatever world needs him next. This isn't the same child that was clinging on for dear life to a world he didn't belong to and didn't want to leave. This is a hero who has grown and understands his role. The perfect cherry on top is the tune of the windmill song from the very first level of the original game, chiming in as he walks off onto his next great adventure. I did my best to just tackle the important stuff this time. Trust me, if I did the usual play-by-play like I did for the Door to Phantom Isle review, this video would be like twice as long, but something I really appreciate about the narrative in this game is that it's able to keep the setup simple, but spends time where it needs to in order to properly develop the characters. That's really the most important part here. It feels like the core themes of the story tie in with each character's plight seamlessly, and that sort of unity and focus is what makes a story feel like it has meaning. This is a beautiful little adventure that warms my heart every time I play it, and I know it will do the same for you.
And there it is. Okay, yep, all seriousness gone. Alright, quitting YouTube. Goodbye.
At first I thought this part was gonna be a little tricky, cause, well, honestly, how many ways can I say you jump around on platforms, solve puzzles, and inflate creatures like balloons like the sick little freak you are? But thankfully, the devs actually gave me a good amount to work with here. Some of the new elements that we saw in Empire of Dreams and Dream Champ Tournament actually made their debut here. You have some returning enemy types like boomies that will explode with a disappointing lack of over-the-top gore, but then again, I guess the E rating would have gotten a little antsy about that, wouldn't it? Some new enemy types include the Chiton that gives you more control over some temporary flight, but the height and speed are controlled by how much you absolutely mash the jump button, or the Herbal, which will send you rocketing through the sky and destroying whatever is above you. The coolest new addition is the Lacuri, which can be thrown at other enemies and returned to your hand in a different color. The amount of enemies that you charge it up with will change what color it turns into and which color of crystals it can be used to destroy, and some of the puzzles that center around these guys are a blast to figure out. There's even some enemies that will act entirely as environmental hazards, like this terrifying thing here that'll come out of the wall and devour anything it sees, not unlike myself when you take me to a buffet, or those terrifying eels from Super Mario 64.
And people still think that stupid piano was the scariest thing in that game.
These new enemy types lead to some really interesting new puzzle formats that will require you to stop and think a minute before proceeding. The solutions to these puzzles are generally pretty simple, but the way that the information is laid out will often take some critical thinking and, in some cases, fast platforming skills to overcome the given obstacle. These are the ideas that stand out as a foundation to the gameplay, but the game also offers some area-specific challenges or obstacles, like running away from an angry robot that wants to turn you into a pancake. A good example is how you return to an area at one point in the game and there's a poisonous miasma covering the entire location. So you'll need to occasionally stop by these lights that will help you recover from the effects so you don't, you know, die. The most obvious addition that helps spice up the gameplay though comes from the airboard, which was such a big deal at the time that they decided to plaster it on the American box art. These sections really are just a ton of fun between the fast-paced movement, plenty of collectibles to grab and obstacles to avoid, but the terrain will often be broken up in ways that force you to make split-second choices to avoid falling off the track, or in one particular scenario, we'll even have you chasing down Tad on a racetrack. This adds a new level of adrenaline when collecting dream stones and the pieces of memory dolls, which are this game's answer to Phantom Millions from the first game. By collecting all 6 parts in every vision, you'll rebuild a memory doll belonging to some big top showman named Mamet. Collect all his missing Mamet dolls and he'll reward you by granting you access to some of the toughest extra visions the Klonoa series has seen up to this point. These extra stages really don't take it easy on you, and it takes a lot of skill to perfect these. Admittedly, more skill than I possess, because while I have beaten these visions, I still haven't collected everything in them. There is sort of one helpful addition introduced in Lunatea's Veil that can potentially assist you in collecting everything. This is actually the first game in the series to introduce co-op, but it's really in the most basic possible sense of the phrase. If you plug in a second controller, a buddy can join in and use Popka to launch you for an extra boost if you're not able to make a jump, and that's basically it. Outside of that, Popka really can't be controlled, so this really isn't a 2-player game thanks to this inclusion or anything, but hey, it's something, I guess? Even with that added benefit, I didn't really bother trying to collect all the dream stones in the game for this one. By collecting all of them, you'll be able to unlock pages in an art book, which is a fine enough reward, but considering that this is one of the most challenging games in the series, which I consider a good thing by the way, I didn't really have the time to perfect this like I did the other games in the franchise. I think I can live with that though, because playing through these visions really is just a joy, and they're rewarding on their own from beginning to end, but a lot of that is thanks not only to the stellar and polished gameplay, but also to the rest of the elements that help tie this package together. We've seen a couple of different visual styles in the series so far, and it's nice to see that Klonoa and the worlds that he travels through look just as good in 2D as they do in 3D, but while the remake of the original game does have the higher resolution and some cleaner details to boast of, I still think Lunatea's Veil has the best art style yet. Everything is given a great looking 3D model, but there's also a slight hint of cell shading here that helps the choices of color and tone really blend well with each other, and the shading is given a chance to shine in each and every location. My favorite little detail is how every character model also has this distinct black outline, adding a little cartoon vibe that I kind of hope the series carries on, assuming we ever actually get to see anything from this franchise again. I have to commend the animation team too though, as there was a lot of work that was put into giving every character a ton of expression, and Klonoa especially has more attitude than ever before here. I just can't get enough of how great the character designs are in this game. Like, they're just so unique, and I can't think of anything else quite like it. My favorite new design though is definitely Tad. It's so simple and clean. But it also just pops off so nicely. I mean, just look at her. The design range here is amazing, but the way that they all seamlessly fit together is also worthy of note, but that goes for the music too. I still have a very special place in my heart for the OST of Door to Phantomile, but Lunatea's Veil absolutely takes the cake here. The compositions are beautiful, exciting, tranquil, calming, emotional, or intimidating, really anything it needs to be. One theme I absolutely can't get out of my head is from this haunted house in Joyland. It's got just such a catchy vibe, I love it. I think the best possible example of the strength of this game's presentation can be found in the very first vision, where there's a mysterious and ominous vibe to the dark and stormy place that you're in, but the beat starts to pick up the further in you get until a brilliant crescendo hits, perfectly selling the feeling of the adventure you're about to embark on. Best story, best presentation, and by far the best gameplay. Lunatea's Veil has it all. Thankfully, it's not as difficult to get hold of as Door to Phantomile. Still not the cheapest retro game out there, but you're not going to be breaking the bank to add this to your collection. If you're lucky enough to find this gem, then please please do yourself a favor and pick it up. I guarantee you won't regret it. This is a remarkable little game, and it really is a shame that it never got more traction, but yeah, after the Wii make, this series just sort of stopped. The sales just weren't there, and any plans to continue the franchise were all halted. Now, there was recently an anime film in the works, but sadly, Viz Media, the studio behind production, ended up canceling the project in January of last year, and yes, I was vastly disappointed to see the plans fall through, but apparently so was Bandai Namco. As a glimmer of hope, late last year there was a trademark filed for Klonoa under a similar name that gave us Katamari Reroll and the new Mr. Driller game, so maybe we're getting a remaster or even a new game soon? Maybe we could finally see a collection of the games that never made it to North America. Give me that JRPG on the Game Boy Advance, or better yet, give me that volleyball nonsense from the PS1. Look, in a year like this, I have to hold on to something, alright? I can dream.
Well, if you're watching this video when it originally goes public, it is my birthday today, so hopefully that'll help sprinkle a little magic on that idea. As for Klonoa, what does the future hold for this guy? Only time is going to tell, but I hope it's nothing but good things. I am glad that I took the time to sit down and give this franchise a look, and I'm hoping that you do the same. He really does deserve better. Now, as for me, I'm going to be switching gears just a little bit, at least temporarily. I'm going to be working on some smaller, simpler reviews of very short and simple and often bad games, so look forward to watching me suffer through those, but they might be leading up towards something bigger coming out later this year, so we'll see how that goes. But if you want to support me along the way, Patreon is definitely a really great way to do that. I can also connect with everybody on our Discord server, which is open to the public, although there are Patreon exclusive channels on there. I also stream on Twitch, so if you want to pop in and watch me play games, maybe just mess around a little bit, always welcome. So I'll be linking all of that in the description down below or to the side or whatever, how the website works. Lord knows YouTube is probably going to change it in like a week. I hope you'll join me for the ride, and until then, my lovely viewers, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission.
Hey, hello, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. It is the Unscripted Mike Show. This is probably gonna be a short one. You know, this was one of those videos where I was going through it and I was in the editing process and just thinking to myself, oh man, there were so many like jokes and ideas that I forgot to add into the script. I really gotta get better about note-taking, but you know, I've been thinking about maybe doing some extra stuff on the side at some point later on in the future, just kind of like, almost podcast style, just kind of going through some of my thoughts or things that I missed or little tidbits, did you know gaming style, just kind of going through some of the little fun stuff that I didn't quite get into the video. Anyway, as always, I want to go ahead and give a special shout out to my top tier patrons, Patricia Marcoux and Christine Larkin. Hugs and kisses. I love you guys so much. And thank you so much, as always, for your support, and also for the new patrons that have come into the into the fold recently. I really cannot express to you how much I appreciate that. It really does help more than you could ever know. And I want to go ahead and just say, new stuff is coming out soon. It is probably going to be shorter and smaller in scale than what I've been doing recently. I think one thing that I would really like to do is, just for my own sanity, I really want to start making some smaller reviews. I remember when I was doing the Spider-Man marathon, one thing that I definitely enjoyed was there were a couple of reviews in there that really weren't all that taxing to make. They were actually pretty short, and I think that they were some of the more fun ones that I ended up doing, and I have some plans on videos that I would like to do in that vein. I think the first of which, I alluded to it in the last review, but I think it's time to return to the universe of Treasure Planet. This time on the PS1 and possibly also on the GBA. We'll see how that goes. But if I want to do this small, I might want to take it, you know, in little baby steps. But then again, there's really only so much to say about the GBA game as it stands, but I'll get deeper into that whenever I start reviewing it. I do also have some big plans for later on in the year. I've got a small little marathon going up for when the Avengers is coming out, so I'm going to be looking at a couple of games just leading up to that. I'm already accumulating all those games so that I have them handy and ready to record, and then if everything goes well and all goes according to plan, I have something really fun in store for October. It's something that I've been wanting to do ever since I started the channel, and I'm hoping to see you on that particular mission. Some people have already seen what that's going to be, but for the short term, I'm going to go ahead and play it a little close to the chest and see if that actually ends up panning out. I'm really hoping it does. And who knows, might become a yearly thing for the channel. I really hope so. So yeah. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching. I have been Wayne. Klonoa deserved better, and I have got to find a way to stop ending all of my videos by saying see you next mission twice. I'll work on that. All right, good night.